We all want to have better relationships with others and with ourselves. Welcome to the Relate Great podcast with Jonathan, Sherman, and friends. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I know a lot of cool people who know a lot of cool relationship stuff. I'm excited for you to get to know them now, too. All right, welcome to this episode of Relate Great with Jonathan, Sherman, and friends. And today I'm really excited to share this episode with you because the two friends I get to interview is one, my best friend, my wife, Kara Sherman, and her best friend, her sister, Kristen Sagers, and they are each other's only siblings. And so my brother-in-law, we oftentimes call them all kinds of things like the Giggle twins and Tweedledum and Tweedledee and who knows what else. But they have a lot of fun together. They've been very close for a long time. And I'm grateful to call my sister-in-law, Kristen, also a friend. We've always enjoyed each other's company and have a good time over the years. With my best friend, Kara, she and I, some of you may know that we've been friends now for 38 years. And we've been married for 33 of those years. We were just friends for 5 years before we started dating. I had the opportunity to interview both of them together and hear these two sisters talk about their two marriages. And with no further ado, we'll just jump right into it with them. Enjoy. So anyway, the reason I'm doing this, as I explained yesterday, I'll explain it again here for those listening, or my listening audience of 4 that may grow to 5 from this one. Is because, fortunately, we get to take for granted in your marriage with Eric and your marriage with me and us together is that we get to have just a nice relationship every day to come home to, and we just kind of know that we're going to be there for each other and have fun and enjoy each other's conversations. We know that if we're going to have conflicts, they're going to get resolved. Nobody's going anywhere, and our marriage and our family isn't ever in jeopardy. But that's really not true for most. The research is, you guys may know this, but just for those who don't know, 45% of first marriages fail, 60% of second marriages fail, and 75% of third marriages fail. It gets progressively worse. And out of all those couples that are married, whether it's their first, second, or third marriage, only 25% report being happily married. So It's pretty grim. And that's what most couples are experiencing. And so when they think about having a great relationship, it sounds good, but for a lot of people, that's something that happens for other people. That's rare. It's a unicorn experience. And so I had one couple years ago. I was talking about this, and the husband said, well, I really like the great relationship idea you keep talking about, Jonathan, but to be quite honest, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. And so what do you mean? He said, well, my parents had a crappy marriage, her parents had a crappy marriage, our grandparents had crappy marriages and were divorced and married several times, and we just don't know what a great relationship looks like. I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. And so I asked him, I said, could you tell me 10 couples that you would love to have a marriage like? And it was like looking deer in the headlights. They couldn't think of any examples. And then I said, well, tell me 10 couples that you know for sure you don't want your marriage to be like. And like, well, we don't want to be like these people or these people. It was very easy for them to give examples of bad marriages. They had no good models. And so it's conversations like this that I want to have with couples that have been married long term. I remember Jessica Simpson, I think, wrote a marriage book in her first year of marriage when she was married to whatever that Nick guy was. I remember seeing it at Target. Shade. And they were talking all about, the secrets of a happy marriage. I'm like, you've been married for a year. What do you know? Right. You don't have kids, and you've got unlimited money. And, of course, I think a year or two later they were divorced or whatever. Yeah. And so it's the real life marriages that I want to talk to. The couples that have been married 20, 30, 40 years, and they actually still really like each other. That's what people need to learn from. And this isn't for us to go, oh, look how great we are. We're not. I always tell my clients, Kara and I aren't the example. We're just a example of many good marriages and what can be learned from it.
An example.
I was going to say that.
It's nice to be corrected by my wife and say thank you for helping me grow. Okay, so with that being said, I've got some questions I'm going to ask both of you, since these two sisters have been sisters their whole life. And they're their only siblings, and so they're really good friends, and they're very silly, and they have a lot of fun together, and they've grown up with their families close together too, which has been nice. So I just thought it'd be nice to I was going to just interview Kristen and her husband Eric and talk to them. He wasn't really interested in that so much. It's not quite his thing, which is fine. And so Kristen offered to do it. And I thought, well, that'd be fun to talk with Kristen. But knowing how these two kind of play off each other, when their mother died, and they gave a shared eulogy at the same time, it was quite both touching and hilarious. and stuff. So I thought it might be kind of fun to have a unique sisters talking about their marriages. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so that being said, first of all, how long have you both been married? Also, when you're speaking, kind of maybe go back and forth and just remind people, say, hey, this is Kara, this is Kristen, whoever's speaking at that moment.
Well, this is Kristen. We got married in 1996.
Yep. Same year as Emily.
So I guess 28 years this year.
Nice.
We got married in 92. So it's been 32 years for us.
And just tell us quickly about how did you meet?
Tell the story, Kristen.
Great.
How did we meet? Well, I think my mother brought her home from the hospital.
No, Eric and I met through a mutual friend, Ken Mitchell. He had a boat in college of all things, and he and I were skiing buddies, and one day he brought Eric.
From his work.
From work. They worked together. And so I hopped in the van, and Ken said, Kristen, Eric, Kristen. And I flipped around to look who was in the back seat, and my first thought was, you're kind of funny looking. And he hates it when I tell that story.
Well, good. Hopefully they'll tell it to a larger audience now.
Great. But, I mean, he was getting ready to go. You know, we were going skiing. He wasn't looking his, best. He just had his swim trunks on. He had long hair at the time and an earring. And anyway, I saw him again like a week later. I was working at the candy counter at BYU, and I saw him walk by, and I thought to myself, isn't that Eric guy? Anyway, he saw me, and he came over, and he ordered some candy, and he finally looked at me, I said to him, aren't you Eric? And he goes, aren't you? And he looks at my name tag, Kristen. But he told me that when he walked out of the Wilkinson Center that day, he told me that his thought was, I could see her and I going on a date.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. So, and then we did.
Then you did.
And then 3 years later, we got married.
Oh.
Right on.
Yep.
Yeah.
After he broke your heart.
Yeah, he did break my heart. But
Stupid Eric.
totally stupid Eric.
Then he repented.
Came crawling back.
He did. Came with his hat in his hand.
Yeah.
He did even one of those side kicks,
Goal.
No, yeah, it was after he dated
Alicia. She had big knockers or something.
Yes, she did.
Oh, gosh.
And nothing between the ears.
That's the stuff we wanted in the audio that I wouldn't have gotten if it
Yeah.
was you and I talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, whatever I say in this story, you're not allowed to...
I can't correct.
You're not
I
allowed
have
to
to be
correct.
like a person doing a documentary that I'm just an observer,
Yeah,
so I don't get to
because
interact
this is
unless-
my story.
Okay, fair enough. That's a good rule.
So, this is Kara. Jonathan and I met at BYU probably within the first week or so of being there. We both had to go to school in the summer semester because we weren't too bright.
Oh, that's helpful. I'm turning this off now. Click.
Well, the funny thing is there were two other
Not
guys.
too bright MFT.
Well, we weren't too bright when we were younger. Well, there were two other guys that we were friends with, Charlie and Steve, and we all talked about our scores. One night, we were trying to get somebody to tell us their ACT scores, and Steve's wife at the time, and she said, "Oh, I don't want to say. I'm so embarrassed," because she's very intelligent, and it was something like 25 or 24, and I'm like, you got nothing on me, girl, and they're all going around telling their ACT scores, and then it gets to me, and I'm like, 18. Actually, I think it was 21, but...
Who was the embarrassed one for the 25?
Carrie.
Oh, that's Carrie.
Uh,
I didn't know you knew Carrie all the way back then.
Oh, this was several years later. We were all talking.
Oh, okay.
This was maybe just a few years ago. Anyway, So John and I met through Charlie, our mutual friend. We think probably at the Deseret Tower pool. And I was already dating someone, and John was dating someone, and so the three guys, and then we would all just go out and hang out, and John and I would go hang out all the time and just run around on campus. And then after my freshman year, I was invited to not come back. But he and one of the other guys got ready and went on an LDS mission. And then that was Steve, and then Charlie, he went on an LDS mission the next spring, and then I went the next summer on an LDS mission. And so while I was on my mission, I don't know, towards the end, kind of in the middle towards the end, I had thought to myself, and he was already home, and I thought to myself, you know what, I think I want to pursue this when I get home. It was just very apparent that he was a quality person,
but not too bright.
But not too bright. That's not what I meant, you know it. And so we got, let's see, he had been home a year by the time I got back up to Provo, to BYU, and in fact, not too long after he had gotten home, he had invited some girl out to Michigan to see him, and they somehow got on the spur of the moment, got semi-engaged, and it broke my heart. I was still out another 4 or 5 months, but he was able to kind of push her off a little bit, and she ended up going on a mission. And then when I got back to BYU, he was dating like 3 or 4 girls. John's very, very nice, and so girls tend to like that kind of thing. And so I had been living back at BYU or in Provo, I think for a couple weeks, and he was getting ready to move into a new apartment, and I was with him, and somebody on my mission had given me these little cards, and one of them, that was the thing back then, was calling cards and things, but we had these little cards somebody had given me, and it said something like, if I give you this, you owe me a date. If you give it back, you owe me a kiss. If you keep it, or I can't remember, it was the whole thing. So, which, now I think about it, and I bet that kid who gave it to me wanted a date. Was one of the other missionaries. I'm like, oh, thanks, and I put it in my pocket, That'll be really handy after my mission.
I've done things like that.
And then years later, it just occurred to me. I bet
that was
his little heart.
I know. So anyway, John was in putting his deposit down and stuff like that, and I was looking through my wallet. I was sitting on the scooter. He had a scooter. I'm sitting there, and I saw this card, and I had never been very forward with boys, ever. And he comes out of this office, and I hand him the card, and he reads it, and he looks at me, and he says, so do you want to go on a date? And I'm like, yeah, let's go on a date. The end.
Nice.
6 months later, we got married.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, it was that quick?
Yeah, that was like August.
Did you give her the card back?
I can't remember. It was whatever the instructions were. I did it so that it communicated that I wanted the date, versus what she did to the poor guy who gave him the card, where she just kept it and said, see ya, sucker.
You clued in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we had been friends for 5 years.
So by the time we got married, we had been friends for 5 years, and the whole time all 4 of us were on our missions, we all wrote back and forth to each other and we used to take these little tape recorders and like Walkmans and talk into these tapes, and we would send it to one another. So you would do 15 minutes, and then the next person and the next person, and we would just send them back and forth. And so we all kept in touch, and when we all came back to BYU, all of us got together again. Yeah.
Nice.
Do you remember when he first kissed you, though?
Yes. We went out on this date.
No, that wasn't it. was at the airport.
Oh, the airport. I'd forgotten about that. I had to make a flight from Minneapolis into Salt Lake, and you guys met me there.
Yep.
This is before 9/11, or this is 1991. And he runs down the gangway at me and grabs me and kisses me. And I was like, oh, my gosh.
She just totally... Because we told, me and Marlene, they're like, John, go kiss her. John, go kiss her. And he's like, should I? I was like, yeah, you should.
I don't think...
Because I knew by this time somehow that you liked him.
Yeah, but you probably didn't take into effect the freak out.
Well, no, I knew you would freak out. I mean, you're coming off of 18 months of an LDS mission where no boys.
Right on the lips.
Mm-hmm. Did
right
you kiss
there.
me on the lips?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. What's going on? Yeah, it kind of freaked me out.
It was funny.
Yeah. But then the next time he tried to kiss me, I backed away and I said, let's talk about this. Because we had been friends for so long. And I was like, I said, I don't know if I want, let's talk about this, because if this doesn't work out, I don't want to ruin the relationship, the friendship.
Well, that's a fair.
And so we didn't kiss that night, but then the next night we did, and we were like making out all the time after that.
Yeah.
So how did he propose?
Kristen gave him an ultimatum.
Yep, pretty much.
Introduce yourself again each time.
Oh, this is Kristen. Yeah, I gave him an ultimatum. Well, we dated for 6 months and had a really good time. And then we broke up.
He broke up with you.
Oh, if I'm honest, we kind of broke up together. I was wondering, I was like, where is this going? Because, I was the ripe old age of 23. Maybe.
I was not a spring chicken anymore.
Yeah. And I was like, well, where's this going? And then it was coming up to the summer, which was motocross season. And he kind of didn't want to have to deal with me during moto season. So we decided to break up. And it was the next day that I realized what that meant. And I cried and I cried.
Oh.
Like I didn't know I was going to do that. I even got physically ill.
She did. Remember,
I've
we
never
walked-
been physically ill before from being emotionally upset.
I think I was pregnant with Adam, and we waddled down and
Yeah,
gave
you did.
you some
Popsicles.
and stuff.
But anyway, we got back together about,
8
months later.
Oh.
We went to a concert, a Rachmaninoff piano concert at I want to say it was the Grand America. Anyway, and then from then on we started seeing each other again and dating, and then we were back to full-on dating by January. And then we just stayed dating for a while, and
Like a year and a half.
like a year and a half. And I knew because of the breakup how I felt about him. And then he, like I mentioned Alicia earlier, he dated her and realized that he wanted quality versus quantity.
And gesture to the breast.
And anyway, but it kept going on and on. And I finally gathered up all my courage because I knew what I was in for if we broke up again. But I said, look, we've known each other for 3 years. And no, we didn't date for that full 3 years. But, we've known each other and have been involved with each other for 3 years. And I said, are we going to move this along? And so he decided that we would go look at rings. And I found one that I absolutely loved. And it was like around $2,400. I don't know. But it was really unique. I remember it had an emerald cut diamond. Anyway, I loved it. And he actually went back the next week and it was gone. And it was kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. So then we decided that we would go look again. And I found my ring and we bought it. And it was $4,000. And he's like, you were just like, warming me up with that other ring because he thought that one was horrible.
I know.
But anyway, and so I knew it was coming. Obviously it wasn't, I gave him the ultimatum. he agreed to start thinking about it, working on it. We bought the ring together, and then he took the ring. And when he decided to do it, he called me up one day and asked if I wanted to go to dinner. And we went up to Salt Lake, and he wanted to take me to the roof, but you needed reservations. And so we went over to the garden, and then after we ate, we went out. There's this big picture window area that looks out at the temple, and he asked me to marry him there. And he just said, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "Yes." And that was it.
Nice.
Nothing. He's not a big, drama fellow at all.
Yeah. It's nice though.
It's the Sagers way.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, anyway,
So
Thank you.
Kara.
this is Kara, and so we had been dating for, I don't know. I know that, that first date we went to there's a little outdoor theater over there by the Utah State Mental Hospital, and we went to see a play there. I don't even remember what play it was.
Shakespeare play or something.
Was it? And then you held my hand. I was so excited. And then afterwards we went back, and that's when you tried to kiss me, and I was like, whoa. And then the next night we got together and we went somewhere. And then I think the third day I had this little bedroom, and I opened up my eyes and I thought, we're getting married. I knew it. I knew it right then. We were going to get married, and I was in love like that fast. And so I thought to myself, I had this thought that came to me that was, if I say something to him about this, he'll freak out. If I say, hey, let's start talking about getting married, And so I just didn't say anything. I just thought, well, we'll just take as long as we need to until he gets ready. And we were eating at Burger Supreme down in Provo. So we started dating, I think, beginning of August. This was towards the end of October, and we're sitting in Burger Supreme. And it was very surprising that you said, if we were to get married, because we had said that we loved each other, but I had never mentioned anything. I was being very patient. I pat myself on the back. Anyway, and you said, if we were to get married, and I'm like, yes. But I'm like, don't get excited, just listen.
Okay, cool.
Serenity now, insanity later. And so I just sat and we listened, we started talking about it, but we didn't get engaged. We started looking for rings. You didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. And you were just going to school. I don't even think you had a job. Did you?
Can't remember.
And I was just delivering.
I did it with some crappy little nothing job.
Yeah, and I don't think at the time you were. And so I was just delivering pizza for Pizza Hut. Worst job ever. And so I think my mother had a diamond, I think like a little 1/4 carat diamond, or maybe 1/3 of a carat. I think it's a 1/3 carat. And there had been a ring that Kristen had seen in some magazine in an ad. And,
really?
And you should go look at this ring. And we went and looked at it, like at Morgan Jewelers or something like that. And we had the diamond that was in it was like a 1/4 carat, and we had them take that out, and we put this 1/3 carat diamond in, and that we still had to pay payments on the thing.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And I knew he was going to go to Michigan, because we're getting close to Christmas here in the end of the semester. And I knew he was going to go to Michigan for, winter break for Christmas and stuff like that. And I was going to go down to Arizona. And so I was like, well, I was all trying to plan the proposal. Let's go up to Salt Lake. We'll go to dinner. We'll go to Temple Square. You can ask me to marry you there. Right?
Jeez.
And you're like, and
Red flag.
Yeah. Hey.
The first of many.
He's still finding red flags. But he decided that wasn't good enough. Oh, by this time I was working at the school. That's right. So I was working at a school. I was an aide in 2 classrooms at Mazer Elementary, I think. And I was in the 2nd grade classroom in the morning and then 6th grade in the afternoon. So in the 2nd grade class, one day, all of a sudden, the loudspeaker comes on and whoever the secretary said, "Is Mrs. Sherman or is Miss Poppleton in there?" "Yeah, she's here. There's somebody here who's here for her." And then you got on and you're like, "Kara?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And the funny thing is, all these people had started crowding into the room, and I was like, "What?
What's happening?
Are we having I'm like looking at the teacher who was student teaching, and I'm like, "Are you getting graded or something?" She goes, "I don't know." And then I hear him come on, and he said, "Kara, yeah, will you marry me?" And the kids all start screaming. This is like, and he can't hear me. And someone else, and then he goes, "Kara, will you marry me?" And the kids start screaming again. And the other people that were in there are like, "Be quiet, "Kara, will you marry me?" And so I ran down the hall, and someone said, "She's coming down there." Anyway, he had some roses for me, and I said yes.
Oh.
That was the proposal.
Nice.
That's sweet.
So go ahead.
You had to surprise me. You weren't going to let me get the upper hand.
No, she kept planning it. Like I said, I'm not going to add anything to it, but I was like, no, you are not planning your proposal. The first and last say I've had in our marriage, but I had it.
Like I said, he's still finding red flags.
So that's all very interesting. I love all that, how you guys met and the proposal and the timelines and things like that. This episode of Relate Great with Jonathan Sherman and Friends is brought to you by, well, me. Yep, I'm my own sponsor. Naturally, it takes time, money, and resources to make this podcast happen. So to support it and to support you and your family, I've created the 7 Principles for Building Strong Families online masterclass and workbook, which is now available at relategreat.net/strongfam. It's also available on the episode page for this podcast, and the workbook is available on Amazon. So what are the 7 Principles of Building Strong Families? They are 1, appreciation, 2, affection, 3, commitment, 4, creative coping, 5, communication, 6, time together, and 7, spiritual wellness. This has been my most requested workshop, which I've given hundreds of times over the last 30 years to thousands and thousands of people in every imaginable setting, from corporations, professional conferences, churches, and prisons, because everyone can use it. No matter who or where you are, we all have families, and we all want to figure it out better. So enroll in my 7 Principles for Building Strong Families online masterclass today and learn how to resolve conflict, improve communication, increase bonding, and create secure attachments with your partner and your kids. This self-paced online course and workbook will help you, your partner, and your family overcome problems and create truly great relationships that last a lifetime. Remember, my podcast listeners get a 20% discount using code STRONG20. Get the book, take the class, and start today at relategreat.net/strongfam. Now I'm really curious just about what is it that you just really like about your husband, Eric? And what does he really like about you back then as well as now? You guys have been married for 28 years now.
Yep.
And Kara and I, we've been married for 32 years. And we all still really like each other. We're actually, right now, we're doing this interview on a cruise in Norway, traveling together. And we make good traveling companions. I was telling my kids, because the sisters, well, they just like to hang out and giggle and talk and laugh about everything, and we as the husbands like to mock the sisters. So we get along well on our end too.
Yes.
So anyway, but yeah, what is it that you just like about Eric, and what does he like about you?
This is Kristen. The first thing that I always say that I like about my husband is funny. He is a hoot. The first, I mentioned we met when we went water skiing, and that day, I have never laughed so much. From the get-go, from the day I met him, he's made me laugh. And he did a couple of things on the boat one of them was, we were waiting for the wind to die down so that the water would become smoother. And I saw that the boat was kind of drifting towards land. And I asked Ken, do you want me to start the boat and move it out? And he goes, no, just turn the wheel and it'll drift the other way. So I turned the wheel. Well, meanwhile, while this has happened, Eric kind of, I don't know what he was doing, was kind of in his own world. He's standing in the middle of the boat and he's like, I'm going to be our sail. And he gets out a towel and he shakes it out and he's holding it up to his shoulders. And at the same time, I turn the wheel of the boat and we start drifting the other way. He starts looking around. He's like, it's working. I remember going, he's not serious. And I turned and looked at him and I was like, he's serious. Oh, and he did a couple of other things that were so funny. And I asked Ken that night, Ken and I were just hanging out, and I said, is he always that funny? And he goes, and Ken's like, I've never seen that guy come and cork like that. And then, but from then on, he was just funny. I don't know how to describe him other than he's funny. You guys know how funny Eric is. Always funny. And so he's, we laugh every day. I mean, I was telling you, I read something about humor in people's lives, and children will laugh like 400 times a day. And it takes a 40-year-old to laugh that many times. It takes them weeks. And I was thinking, not in my marriage. We laugh all the time. Sometimes the first thing we do is giggle when we wake up in the morning. Somebody says something funny and we are just giggling. So, that's what I like about my husband, for one. And what I also, I'm on the more serious side. I like how he's very able. He's confident and he's able, and he just knows how to get a job done. And I've always loved that because it takes the pressure off me. So those are a couple things that I can say. There's obviously more, but those are the things that come to my mind. And what does my husband like about me? Well, I think he likes that I laugh at him and with him.
Both.
Yeah.
Easily entertained.
Yeah. And I don't know. What does he like about? I think he thinks I'm capable too. I think, I've been able to raise our kids and everything. I don't know. I guess I can't really pinpoint it. I just know that he likes me. I just know that he likes me.
You laugh at his jokes.
We like each other's company. We like to be around each other. We don't seek for ways to get away from each other. He needs his alone time sometimes, but not because he's trying to get away from me. He just needs to reset. So, anyway.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when John and I were living in Illinois while he was in grad school, and I called. You and I were talking on the phone. You were telling me all these funny things he said or did. And this is right after you got married. I don't even think you were pregnant yet with anybody. And you said, I'm sitting there laughing my head off. And I go, do you guys just sit around laughing all the time? You said, pretty much.
Pretty much. That's true. Pretty much.
Well,
Our
yeah,
kids.
That's funny.
Our kids just look at us and they're like, oh, they're at it again.
They don't think that you're as funny as you think you are?
I don't know. We'll giggle and I'll sit on his lap and we'll sit there and it's not really coochie-coo stuff, but we're just sitting there talking to each other, giggling and poking fun or whatever. And our kids are just like...
It's a good example, though.
It is.
Something in here?
It is.
I was just commenting earlier. We're on this little vacation together, and I was commenting during lunch today what I really like as I observe the two of you together is Eric will get all annoyed or grumpy about something, kind of mock grumpy. He's not like actually grumpy, but just like leave me alone or something like that. And then Kristen gets this big, happy grin on her face. She's not deterred at all. She's not discouraged in the least. And she gets this big grin on her face, and then she goes in for the kill, for some either big hug, or she looks up at him adoringly, or she tickles him, or pinches him, or something. It's like she's just like it's just a fun dynamic that they have.
Yep.
You see you play off of that, and I can imagine thinking. Because, of course, I'm always observing, one just as a person, but also with a little marriage therapist mind. And I look at couples' body language a lot. And it's always very interesting to see how people interact with each other. And you guys are very touchy-feely and very affectionate. And you said something that was really important when you're like, well, I'm not sure what it is he likes specifically, maybe this, that. I just know that he really likes me. And in the studies from John Gottman, what we know is that when you hear the marriage masters, these couples have been married for a long time and they really have a good relationship. In the media, you always hear about, how important sex is and how important romance is, and that's a wonderful part of the relationship. But when you hear the marriage masters talk, they don't talk about those things. They don't even use the word love up front. And the first few words, they use words admire, respect. Those are the words that they have the most. And it's so interesting, different from what we see normally in the world or society, the message of being more like, oh, we're just madly, passionately in love, and it's just always exciting, and the chemistry is so great, and that's the world's view. But the reality is, real long-lasting couples, they just really like each other. Yeah, so it was interesting to hear that from you.
Well, I remember when this is Kara, sorry. I remember when we were first married, or even after we'd been married for a few years, and I'm a chatterbox. Sometimes I'm just like, I had nothing to say. And John will be the chatterbox, but we'd go out to eat, and, there was this thing that went around that every person has 10,000 words in them every day, and that a woman isn't able to get rid of all her words, or like a stay-at-home mom. So, whereas the husband's out working, and he uses up his 10,000 words, but the wife has been home all day. She hasn't used her 10,000 words, so when the husband comes home, she just, Anyway, we'd go out to eat, and there would be these old couples, and sometimes not even really old people, having dinner together and not saying a word, not even looking at each other. And I think, how can you just sit across from each other and not say anything, not have a discussion about anything? And I've got a few friends now who are about my age or a little bit older who have a hard time having a conversation with their spouse because they don't have anything in common. They've worked side by side all these years, but separately, and they don't have anything to talk about, and it's just, I'm thinking to myself, how do you not have something to talk about with your spouse? I mean, how do you not want to go and spend time with them and share and stuff like that? But I think that's an old way of doing things, you work on things together, but you spend so much time and so much effort on the kids that there's nothing left for the marriage at the end. But what am I supposed to answer?
No, that's a good point. What do you like about your husband, and what does he like about you?
I like that John is a hard worker, and that he, what I really like is I say, you know what we should do? And then he'll say, we meaning me. I'm like, well, yes, and then he'll do my little projects for me, or he'll put it on his list of things to do. And that he's attentive, and he's super patient. And if he wasn't patient, we probably still wouldn't be together, because that was kind of hard. Those first 12 years were pretty hard. But yeah, that's what I like about him.
Thanks.
No.
Yeah. What do you think I like about you?
I don't say I'm sorry with words as much as I say it with food.
This is her fault. Pointing to my belly. Lots of apologies here.
It's true.
Unspoken apologies.
No, that I have kept trying also, that I keep making myself better and working hard and just doing the things I want to do and not letting things get in my way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good? Is that good?
That's great. Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard. That's hard to answer.
It's an interesting one to answer. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah, yes, that too. But there are a lot of couples that they're funny and they laugh, or they like each other for certain things, or maybe they are hard workers. And those are all really good things. This is kind of building off of that question. You don't spend a lot of time on it, but it's like, what are the character traits? And maybe it doesn't have to be just about you or him, but just about as a couple. What would you say really makes your marriage work? Because people can have lots of the likable traits, but then they end up not liking each other eventually. Mm-hmm. So whether it's commitment or dedication or your faith or whatever types of things, what is it about your marriage that makes it work, that makes it safe, that no matter how bad things get, that no one's going anywhere? I don't know, whatever thoughts you have with that.
This is Kristen. Well, when you're talking, one of the things, it's an experience that I think kind of set the tone for our marriage that happened early on. I always expected Eric home for dinner. You know, he worked at a motorcycle shop and he got off late, but I always expected him home for dinner at a certain time. And I had made dinner and he didn't come home. And I kept it warm.
This is before cell phones.
Yeah, and he didn't come home. And I finally ate and he didn't come home. And then I finally cleaned up and he still wasn't home. And then he finally rolls in. And I said, "Where have you been? I had dinner." And he goes, "Oh, I went up to Mom's." And, you know, what? Why didn't you call me and tell me? You know, I was really mad. And I was mad. I was so mad. And I started reacting to him how I learned to react from, you know, bless her soul, our mother. And I remember yelling at him, "Don't you ever do that to me again." And I was yelling it. And he turned around and he put me in my place like that, so fast. "You're not going to talk to me like that. We will not do that." Or something, I don't know what he said. Mm-hmm. And it shut me right up. Mm-hmm. And I have always been grateful that he stood up for himself and didn't let that behavior of mine perpetuate in our marriage. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, ever since then, actually a lot of times it's hard to say angry at each other. I don't know if we've ever been super angry at each other, but if something's bothering us or whatever, we're usually very quiet. It's not the silent treatment. We're just very quiet because at least I am working on not saying something I'll regret. And then eventually...
I need to learn how to do that.
Eventually, I will, like if I'm mad at something, I will say, I'll just get kind of the courage up, I guess is how I look at it, and to address it with them. Because, you know, I just don't want it to be, and it never does. I don't know why I get scared. I don't want to turn it into a big deal, but, you know, and then we'll talk about it. And I can't even give an example of what it is. It really doesn't happen that very often. Yeah. But, yeah, so that's just kind of, as silly as it sounds, I think we use silence a lot, not as a punishment, just as a way to not come at each other with raw feelings and saying something that's hurtful or whatever. We eventually get around to it, fixing it.
That's a great distinction.
So, yeah.
Using silence as not as a punishment, but as a protection.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, and so I've wondered, is that exactly the healthiest thing to do?
The way you described it was very healthy.
Well, that's good, because it's never like I said, it is never a punishment. It's not like we're withholding our affection or anything from each other. He's also just a stoic guy anyway. It probably bothers me more than it bothers him.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she's silent for once. Shut up. Anyway, my eyes are tearing. Can I get a tissue or something?
What's the question?
What was the question?
What are attributes of our relationship?
Yeah, what's it that makes the relationship safe? What are the character traits that makes you know that whatever good or bad times we're having, we're going to be around. No one's going anywhere. That's not just things that we like about each other, which are good. There's a lot of couples that liked each other, but they didn't stay together.
They didn't,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So what is it about?
I think one of the things is just commitment and time together. That we take time to make time together, to go out. You know, for years we had little kids and we couldn't afford to go out. So that was a little harder. I know I felt more, well, once in a while I'd say to you, I feel really distant from you. I don't feel like we've had enough time together. And once in a while you would say that to me. And this is during when the kids were growing up, and kids take a lot of your time and effort and money. And I'd say, I feel distant from you. And I remember the first time I said that to you, you go, well, what do you mean? And I think you were worried a little bit, but I'm like, well, we just haven't had time to talk and to, just talk about what's going on and stuff like that. So that was something that we would say to each other once in a while. I haven't said that in a long time. But the other thing is commitment. So I remember I don't think we argued at all when we were dating. John had no idea what he was getting into, the poor guy. And,
Red flag.
Red flag. Like I said, he's still uncovering them. I'm just kidding. When we were first married, we were living in this little fourplex, and it was I think about it once in a while, I'm like, oh, you could hear everything on the other side of the walls. But I can't remember what the argument was. And because of the way I was raised and our mother, I became very volatile very quickly. And shouting and screaming and threatening and then finally just walking out and getting mad and slamming the door and walking down the street, and I say something like, I want a divorce or whatever, because that's what our mother would say once in a while. And
not super often,
no,
but she would say it once in a while.
Once in a while, and I want a divorce. And I remember when I was a kid thinking, please get divorced. Please, I'll go live with Dad. And that really hurt your feelings because you came from a family of divorce and how that whole family situation went. And you said to me, don't ever say that again. Those are not words that we're going to say. And even though I still would scream and yell and stuff like that, I don't think I ever said that again. But that was one thing, is that we were committed to getting through that. And like I said, the first 12 years were really difficult, and then I found medication. And it's been a breeze ever since.
Plus the kids got older.
Yeah, the kids, when their kids are little, that toddler to 12-year-old age is hard. It was hard on me anyway. But I loved it when they were teenagers, even though it wasn't all roses and unicorns, but babies are hard.
The young kids are physically hard. The older kids are mentally and emotionally hard.
That's a good way to put it.
But I became medicated, and then I'd sit there, we'd be sitting somewhere, and I think I don't remember this, in the past maybe I would get real quiet if I was getting mad about something, and you'd say, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm happy, and I would brighten up really fast. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm good. I'm good to go, and you had to check on that several times. You finally stopped asking me that, but for the first few years after I became medicated, you'd say, what are you thinking about? Nothing. Just happy to be here. I'm happy. Oh, okay. And it took some time to kind of decompress that whole situation. But like I said, again, that commitment and then the time together. And just, people always talk about, we never communicate. Well, you got to take the time to communicate. But we just sit and talk. And there's times where all these things have happened, and I'll save up all these little things, and I just think, I don't have the energy to talk about that. I'll have to do it another time. And you're kind of the same. But as we've gotten older, we have more mental energy again. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's our commitment, and especially your commitment to me, because it cannot be easy. and just taking time to be together and to nourish the relationship. And even if it's, in the winter time, well, I go to work at 9:30 at night. Sometimes he doesn't come in till 9, but one of our favorite things to do is sit on the couch, even if it's just for 15, 20 minutes, and watch TV together, and we don't even have to talk.
And you get foot rubs.
I get foot rubs, yep. But sometimes, in the middle of the winter when it's cold, I'll have dinner and I'll say, we're eating in front of the TV tonight. Because it's just him and I, and he'll go, yay! And we'll go and we'll sit in front of the TV and on the couch and eat dinner and just sit for like 2 hours before I have to go to work. Yep. And that's just, and I said to him, this is my favorite time of the day. Mm-hmm. Summertime's a little different. I'm busy. But in the wintertime,
Great.
I got time to spare.
Just a couple more questions. And you guys kind of already answered this, I think, in some of your conversation, but just one thing that you hear from couples all the time as well, love fades. People, they fall in love, they drift apart, they fall out of love. It's kind of a very passive, accidental, life just happens this way. Listening to both of you talk, it doesn't sound like the relationship is accidental. It sounds very purposeful, how you guys engage with your husbands and they engage with you. But what would you say, how would you kind of answer that? Does love fade? Or what? How do you guys make sure, how do you keep the romance alive? And not that it has to be over-the-top romance, like you were saying, Kara. Sometimes our favorite time is just being together and just hanging out. And we'll watch TV, pause it, show each other something funny, or comment, or talk while we're doing it. But just being with each other, holding each other, touching each other. It doesn't have to be over-the-top romance, but how would you answer that when people say, well, love just fades over time? There's almost like there's nothing you can do about it.
I have a really quick answer to that. This is Kara. Years ago, I grew up in Phoenix, and I can't remember why, but I went to this family's house for some reason. I was probably 16 or 17, and it was the Gillelans. Oh. And they were a couple that had a pretty happy marriage. They had 10 kids, and he was self-made, and they'd both gone to BYU and then moved back to Arizona, but they were really happy together and just easygoing, laid-back people. And I said something about, I compared my parents' relationship to a lot of people because it was so volatile. Well, my mother, not my dad, but that I'd wanted a quiet relationship where we're always in love, and I just don't know how people fall out of love, or and I was talking about romantic love, that when you first fall in love and it's just so, you Twitter-pated and you just want to be with them all the time and stuff like that. And they kind of both looked at each other and they looked at me and they're like, that doesn't last. And I'm like, what? They're like, that just goes away. And a different kind of love comes in. And I said, well, what? I was so concerned because I wanted this love that I didn't see, but it was actually there. I just didn't know it, with her parents. And they explained that you fall in love, but then you have to make this commitment, and then you have to then build on it and keep working at it. And it's not something that just happens and continues to happen on accident. Mm-hmm. And it actually shifted my way of thinking. I thought maybe they were full of prunes, as my grandpa would say. But I kind of was like, well, we'll see. But they were right, but they ended up the conversation saying it's a deeper love. Mm-hmm. It's deeper, it's more, what's the word I want? It's deeper and just more important. I'll never forget that conversation. That was a good conversation. But whenever I hear people give this crap about, we fell out of love. How do you fall out of love? You were in love. And I'll say, you didn't work on it. And of course I say everything that comes to my mind. You didn't work on it then. We worked on it. No, you didn't. You did not work on that. That's why you fell out of love.
Well, and sometimes the feeling of falling out of love, maybe it happens to everybody, but when I hear people say that, they don't either work on it or they don't understand that it's not exactly that you're falling out of love. It's maybe that your love is changing.
Yeah.
And for people who don't have a proper perspective on that, that can be really frightening, I guess. I mean, I think it would be frightening.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned you had that conversation with the Gillens, because it reminded me of when Mom and Dad, and I don't know if, I think they were gathering to go to the temple all together.
Oh.
You know how they would do that. And the Gillens were sitting on the couch, and there were some other couples there. And somebody said something about the Twitter-pated kind of love. And it was the Gillens, again, who said, and thank goodness that doesn't last.
I know, right? And didn't she say something like, you would never get anything done?
You would never get anything. I know. And I mean, I was like, huh? And then I started thinking about it. I was like, yeah, because when you're in that Twitter-pated just...
That's all you want to do is be together and stars in your eyes.
Oh, yeah. And that, I mean, just that comment helped me have a better perspective on what marriage was going to be like and could be like. It wasn't all about, passion and excited feelings and butterflies. That has to go away.
It does. And it doesn't mean you can't feel it at other
times, but it's not all the time.
Once in a while, you go, oh, I had a little butterfly.
Yeah.
That was nice. I got things to do.
Okay.
But yeah, I just think a perspective on what marriage is and is supposed to be might help a lot of people. That's why I've decided I'm going to send my kids to premarital counseling.
Smartest thing that can be done. Yeah, smartest thing. The research on that,
if they get married,
changes the numbers. I gave you the doom and gloom numbers up front. The good numbers are that 66% of divorces, 2/3 could be prevented with just two things: education and intervention. Education, what do we need to know that we just never learned?
Yeah.
And intervention, how do we apply it with our unique situations, personalities? Now, of course, that number is true when couples are coming to me, and nobody comes to me as a marriage therapist when they should.
No.
They always come at the point of crisis. And that's obviously better than not coming, because 2/3 of them are going to get the education and intervention and save their marriage.
Yeah.
But when's the best time for education and intervention? Before you get married or 20 years into your marriage? Obviously, when's the best time to get educated for your career? Before you start your career or after you're 20 years into, right? And stuff. So premarital counseling, just to me, I always tell people it's like marriage. It's like buying marriage insurance. It's like divorce proofs, affair proofs marriages tremendously. It's astonishing. What I was going to say as far as the falling out of love thing and love fading is, like you said, Carrie, a lot of people just aren't taking care of it, and they don't even know that they're supposed to. That's why these conversations are important to hear from real couples. Because even though that intense romance isn't there, anybody knows me knows that I'm a hopeless romantic. And I love romance. I've told my couples plenty of times that Carrie and I have fallen out of love countless times. And it's our job to fall back in love. But instead of waiting to fall back in love, we take charge of that and regenerate do the right behaviors, keep the right commitments like you were talking about, so that we can do the right behaviors and commitments that create those feelings again. And a lot of people they kind of wait for the emotions to come, and their relationships are emotion-based. Right. And so when the emotion is high, I feel loving, then I will act loving. But when the emotion's low, I don't feel loving, so I act unloving, like you were both sharing with what you learned from your mom. And, fortunately, like you said, Eric and I stopped in a different way, not as clearly as Eric did early, but I stopped other things, saying, no, we're not going to behave this way because these ways of behaving aren't loving. And on the romantic side, there's how much playfulness. You talk about you and Eric laughing. Kara and I laugh all the time, and there's a lot of playfulness. There's a lot of joking, a lot of lines that we quote from movies and shows all the time that make up half of our conversation. and there's a lot of playfulness. There's a lot of, smacking each other on the butt, or just, little innuendos or little inside jokes that have been going on for, 30 plus years, and to have that playfulness, I think is part of that romance. So Remember to enroll today in the 7 Principles for Building Strong Families Masterclass and get the workbook to learn how the 7 principles can help strengthen your parenting and your partnering to enrich your family, overcome problems, and create truly great relationships that last a lifetime. My podcast listeners get a 20% discount using code STRONG20. Get the book, take the class, and start today at relategreat.net/strongfam. Last question, and you kind of already started to answer this one, is what advice would you give to young couples getting married now? And all our kids are at that age where they're either getting married or may get married at some point or be in a serious relationship. You said one thing for sure, premarital counseling. That's great. Any other last-minute advice or that you would give to people about having a great marriage, especially young people?
I don't know.
Don't do it.
Oh, stop.
It's too hard.
You never had it so good.
No.
Anyway, as far as other advice, I would say make sure we've talked about it already, make sure you try to talk every day. Even if it's just silly, it doesn't have to be in depth. Mm-hmm. It's you're connecting every day. And also, I think sex is important. And when I say that, I don't think it means that you have to go at it every single day. That's not what I mean. I think it's important that you try to have sex, but I also think it's important that you try to understand like where your partner's coming from. If a woman isn't feeling particularly sexy, hopefully the husband will, not push for it, or you know what I'm saying? It's kind of,
There are a lot of jerks out there.
there are, but hopefully the man can be very patient, and this isn't true for all couples, I know, but I think in general, hopefully the man can be more patient and the woman could be more giving,
Sure.
and just make sure that you communicate about that.
Yeah.
I think that's important to communicate about it.
Very much so. It's a huge conflict issue for a lot of couples.
Mm-hmm. And if they can just understand where each other is coming from, it might make it, a little bit easier to deal with it. But anyway.
Well, I think a lot of people's idea and their ideas of sex come from TV and porn.
Oh.
Porn is such a big
Yeah.
problem, but TV and porn, that it's going to be this exciting, wonderful, throw each other around the room thing every time you have sex.
Every time.
And that's not ever, it never happened, that's never happened to me.
Nope.
I've yet to throw you around.
No. And then hike me up on top of a dresser, and let's go.
And doing it in the shower.
Oh, yeah, doing it in the shower.
Whatever.
Go ahead and try.
I love
if
the
you
looks
think.
on women's faces, especially. And I'm like, ain't nothing happening there.
Especially if there's like a
They're really
huge
good actors.
height disparity.
Yeah. It's so bad. And anyway. But yeah, I agree. I just think the way that sex is portrayed on TV, in the movies,
Porn,
and everybody sees porn from time to time. I'm not condoning that. I'm just saying you can't get
happens.
away from it.
Yeah.
But I think it totally clouds our idea on what sex should be, what it should look like.
And
it's
then
just
what your neighbor or your best friends or what the people that what their idea of sex
Yeah.
is. It's not a competition.
no. So
I think my thought is one of the things you've told people before is that you need to date for 12 months and a road trip. And
4 seasons in a road trip.
4 seasons in a road trip. And that's something we didn't go on a road trip, and we only dated and then got married in 6 months. And you didn't see nothing, and I didn't see much. We just were basically bound by our sexual urges. We just wanted to horny kids, man. But I knew it was right, but there wasn't a whole lot of.
It's your fault for having great legs.
And then but that 4 seasons in a road trip, seeing each other in every condition, do you like Christmas? There are people who don't like Christmas and will make Christmas miserable for the other person. I know people like that. Or their birthday. They don't like their birthday because it's near Christmas, or and they sit and pout about it and make it miserable for other people. Or do you get stressed out when things aren't going well, like your car breaks down or something like that when you're on a trip? How do you act and react when that kind of thing happens? And those are big telltale signs, and especially by pulling it out to, 12 months and doing some of these stressful things together, you can kind of weed out the narcissist. Because a narcissist is going to want you to get married very quickly before you can see the red flags, before you can see any of those things, and go, oh, yeah, I don't want that in my marriage. Because they'll keep it looking really good and real tight, and then as soon as they get married, all bets are off. They can act however they want because they've got what they want. There's all kinds of reasons, but, some people, I've known several people who've gotten married really quick, 6 weeks or whatever, have great marriages. Yeah. But I'm willing to bet that's just
the exception to the rule.
Exception to the rule. So, spending time together and, does your family like him? That wouldn't have worked for us. Mom and Dad did not like Eric.
Mom especially did not like Eric.
But he's so funny.
I know. She loved him by the time she died. She thought he was the bee's knees.
Well, Mom liked John more than she likes me.
Well, I'm sure once your parents saw, what's true for any parent, when someone's so good to your kid.
Yeah.
You can't help but love that person when you see how good they are to you.
Yeah.
Well, Eric was always made...
Obviously, Eric adores you.
Eric would make jokes, and Dad would get all, I think he's abusive. He's not abusive.
Really?
Yeah.
Dad, Eric is the least abusive man.
Yeah. He pulled me aside once. He's like, is he treating you right? Yes.
Really?
Well, I worry about his jokes. Dad, we give it to each other. We're laughing.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious.
It's a safe sarcasm.
It is a safe. And the thing about any Sagers is, if they like you, they're going to tease you.
If they're not teasing you.
If they're not talking to you, they don't like you. So
that's why I know Ryan likes me.
I know. I've always said the only place you can go and be teased relentlessly and leave feeling absolutely loved is the Sagers house.
Exactly.
That's great.
You said something, let me see if I can come up with it real quick. Oh, you were talking about birthdays and things, and I kind of giggled because I just recently heard of a man or something, I don't know if it was on Instagram or whatever, it's Mother's Day. His wife is taking care of the kids, and he does absolutely nothing for her on Mother's Day.
Wow.
Because you're not my mother.
Well, you're not my mother.
Oh, gosh.
And does the 2-year-old, is he innately, is he born with the innate understanding of what you do on Mother's Day? No, that's your job as a dad.
Yeah.
To teach what you do for your moms on Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm. For your wives.
For your wives. It's just so funny how that happens.
But, when Father's Day comes around, he'll enjoy that.
Oh, yeah, he'll sleep in and everything.
Sure.
And anyway, but I just,
amazing.
When you said that, just make sure, oh, now I have something to tell you about the advice for a marriage. Don't be afraid to tell what you want as a wife or as a husband. Mm-hmm. And that Mother's Day is why I bring this up, this reminded me, is the first Mother's Day we had. Bless my husband's heart, he didn't do anything for me. And I was so mad and so hurt. But I decided, as Mother's Day rolled around the next time, we had a discussion and everything. As it rolled around the next time, I decided that I would tell him exactly what I wanted.
This is what you're going to do.
I warned him that it was coming. This is what I want. And he did every single thing I asked. And it didn't mean any less that he followed my directions. It didn't mean any less to me.
Yeah.
Because and I realized, as much as I have my expectations. He's not in my head. I have to teach him is the wrong word, but I have to tell him what I want and what, my expectations are. So he's not out there going, well, what do I do? Is it the right thing? Is it the wrong thing?
It's like the hex.
It's like the hex.
She never says what. Well, once in a while she'll say what she wants, and they get her crap.
She wanted the foot bath and got the yellow pants.
Yeah, the yellow pants. That's right.
Oh, and
anyway,
what show is that?
The middle.
The middle. No, that is superb.
Well, I think on the other part of that too is if you do tell them what you want, don't hold them accountable and say I shouldn't have to tell you.
Yeah. Don't say that.
Don't be a poop head. Anyway.
Yeah. Those last 2 points you both made on that last point was really important. I cannot tell you as a marriage therapist how many times I'll be with a couple and I'll understand what she's wanting and he's totally not getting it, and it's been a problem in their marriage for years. And I get what she wants, so now I'm starting to advocate for her and helping him understand what she really wants and what she really needs him to do and say, just like you're describing with Mother's Day or something. And then I'm building this very careful tower of cards, like a tower of understanding to get him to this pinnacle of, I get it, and I'm willing to do it. Mm-hmm. And he's finally willing to do it, and then you know what she says? Well, I don't want you to do it just because the therapist said to. I don't want you to do it just because I told you to.
You should
just know, or you should just do it because you want to do it. And I'm like, and then I see this whole delicate tower that I've created just destroyed after 45 minutes. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. You have been complaining about this for years, and because you don't like where it's coming from. I just got you. I just got what you wanted in 45 minutes that you've been having able to get for 20 years. And he's finally willing. And it's so that what you're describing seems obvious to you is really, it's gold, because I see it all the time of tell him exactly what you want. When I've said this to so many guys over the years, I said, what would it be like if she just told you exactly what she wanted in a respectful, direct, sincere way? What would that be like for you? And without fail, every guy I've asked, you see his body language go like this. His shoulders go down. Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah. It's never like, that'd be nice.
You're not mind readers.
Not mind readers. And women feel like it's less if they have to tell them. Like, no, and I love that you shared it. It didn't feel any less because you told him. If anything, it's like, because guys, if they're a good guy, like you said, he's capable. Mm-hmm. He knows how to solve problems, but we as guys, we're tool guys. Give me an instruction manual that I can follow. Give me the to-dos. Show me the steps, and then I can go execute. Guys love to execute and have the right tools for the job, and then I can perform like crazy. And then if the woman can receive that, then she gets more of what she wants more often, and he gets to feel more successful more often, and then they both win. Mm-hmm. We're all winners.
Yep. That goes with everything in your marriage, not just Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Clean the bathroom.
No, seriously, things like that. And you said earlier, I don't want to teach, but you said, no, I think teaching is a great word. Yeah. Teach each other and be willing students of each other, men and women. Be willing to learn from each other. Nobody knows Kristen more than Kristen on the entire planet. Mm-hmm. No one knows Kara better than Kara, so it's my job to learn her ways and vice versa.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you both so much. Any parting words or anything else you want to say about marriage in general or specific or your experiences, or is that a good?
That's good.
Okay.
I love being married.
Yeah, I do too.
Yep.
That's why I carry the romantic burden in the marriage. I love being married. What do you feel?
Yep.
Uphill battle all the time.
Hey, I cuddled you this morning, so you're fine. You're gonna have to hold on to that for another 6 months.
Oh, and I'll stop it. Jeez. Carrie used to say, "Camel up."
Camel up, buddy.
Hey, she was clear with her expectations.
Yours don't matter.
Well, thank you both. This was a good twofer interview. It was really good. So thank you both very much. That's it for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, share a quick rating, and review. It takes like 30 seconds, and I read all of them. It means a lot to me, and it really helps us reach a larger audience. Also, 2 things. 1, remember to visit relategreat.net/podcast to get the resources referenced in this episode. And 2, to start taking the 7 Principles for Building Strong Families online masterclass and workbook to strengthen your family. Doing so supports both this podcast and, more importantly, it supports you in building your family even stronger than it already is. Remember, Relate Great podcast listeners save 20% with promo code STRONG20. Get the book, take the class, and start today. Original music for this podcast by my friend, Gary Pilcher. Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you next time on Relate Great with Jonathan Sherman and Friends.